I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who gets blindsided by his own wife. Her name, Emily, and honestly, she seemed perfect at first. We'd been together for almost 3 years, engaged for the last 6 months, and everything felt like it was falling into place. We had plans, a future, a nice apartment, and I thought we were building something real. But then little things started to crack, signs I chose to ignore because I was head over heels. It started with small stuff, missing phone calls, her being strangely secretive about her phone, and those late nights at work that she never wanted to talk about afterward. She'd brush it off, call me paranoid, tell me I was overthinking because she loved me. But I could see the way she'd sometimes avoid eye contact when I'd ask about her day, or the way she'd quickly delete messages if I looked over her shoulder. I told myself I was probably just being insecure, that I trusted her. I wanted to believe that she was honest, that she was faithful, but deep down I knew something was wrong. Then, a few weeks ago, I started noticing her phone acting weird. She'd leave it somewhere and forget about it, or suddenly change her passwords. One night I caught her trying to hide it from me when I went into the bedroom. That's when I found the text messages, nothing explicit at first, just enough to send a chill down my spine. It was from a guy named Jake. The texts were flirty, playful, and the kind of things that made me feel sick. They talked about meeting up, about secret fun, and how much they missed seeing each other. My stomach sank. I knew exactly what was happening. I didn't confront her then. Instead, I waited, trying to piece everything together. But the signs kept piling up. I started noticing her phone's call history and messages that disappeared when I looked. The way she suddenly became distant whenever I tried to bring up her weekend plans or her late nights. She'd get defensive, call me paranoid or insecure, tell me I was imagining things. But I was. I knew deep down that she was lying. One day I decided to follow her. Not stalker style, just enough to catch her in the act. That night she left the house around midnight, saying she was meeting up with friends. I followed her to a bar downtown, and there she was, leaning into some guy I didn't recognize, her hand on his knee, her face way too close. They looked cozy, intimate even. I felt like my heart stopped. It was her, I knew it. I saw enough to confirm my suspicions. My wife was cheating on me right before our wedding. That moment hit me like a freight train. I didn't want to believe it at first, so I kept watching, trying to catch her doing something worse. But she stayed there, laughing and kissing him outside that bar like they had no cares in the world. I couldn't process what I was feeling: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I'd never been so humiliated in my life. She had lied, gaslighted me for months, and now I saw her with my own eyes. That's when I realized everything I'd believed in was a lie. I couldn't move. I just stood there, watching her press up against that guy, her lips moving in some kind of private joke. My head was spinning, and I felt like I was underwater. Everything was muffled, except for that sickening feeling. In my gut, I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't just storm in there and cause a scene, not without a plan. So I stayed in the shadows, trying to gather my thoughts, trying to breathe through the rage and heartbreak. I honestly didn't know whether I was more angry at her for cheating or embarrassed that I'd been so blind, so stupid to trust her. I'd always been the guy who believed in honesty, in loyalty. And here she was, out in the open, making a fool of me. That realization just burned inside me like fire. When she finally kissed him, I snapped back to reality. I pulled out my phone, took some pictures, some of her smiling, leaning into him, others of their car parked outside. I knew I had to have proof, something tangible I could hold over her. I was shaking, tears threatening to come, but I kept it together. I didn't want her to see me like this, not yet. I had to be strategic. That night I went home and waited. I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything I saw, every lie she'd told me about her nights, out every excuse she'd made for being distant. I thought about what I'd do next: confront her, or just leave the evidence and walk away. I knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just some casual fling. It was her betrayal of everything we'd built, and it was raw and real and brutal. The next morning, I woke up to her acting like everything was normal. She was in the kitchen, pretending to be casual, making coffee. Her face was too calm, her smile too fake. I looked at her, and for a second I wondered if she even knew I knew. But her eyes flickered, and I saw that she was trying to hide something. That's when I decided I'd had enough. There would be no more hiding, no more lies. I was going to confront her right then and there. I told her I needed to talk. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was in control of the situation. "What's wrong, babe? You look like you saw a ghost." I kept my voice steady, calm even. "I saw you last night, Emily. I followed you, I saw you. With Jake outside that bar. Tell me what the hell is going on." Her face froze for a second, then she rolled her eyes and started to lie. Again. "Oh, that, you're crazy, you're imagining things. We were just talking, having a friendly drink. You're overreacting as usual." I felt 1,000 emotions at once: anger, disappointment, betrayal. How could she lie so easily? How could she look me in the eye and deny what I saw with my own damn eyes? I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her admit it. But I didn't. Instead, I just stared at her, struggling to keep it together. I knew from that moment on my world was changing forever. Her reaction only fueled my rage. She brushed it off like I was some kind of lunatic, calling me paranoid and jealous, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed. She got defensive, her voice rising a little, trying to turn it around on me. "You don't trust me, after everything. Maybe you're the one cheating, huh?" That was the moment I realized she was just good at gaslighting, twisting everything to make me doubt myself. But I was going to buy into her bullshit anymore. I told her flat out that I'd had enough of her lies, that I'd been suspicious for weeks, and everything just clicked into place now. She kept denying, her eyes darting, her words full of bitchy sarcasm. "You're crazy. You just want to start a fight. I'm tired of your accusations." She even had the nerve to say she needed space, that I was suffocating her. I swear, the woman is a master manipulator. I was boiling inside, but I kept my cool barely. I told her she could keep spinning her lies, but I had proof now. My phone had the pictures, and I was ready to show her. I wanted her to face the reality of what she'd done. But instead of getting defensive, she just started turning the tables, claiming I was possessive, insecure, that I was controlling her. That's when I realized she's good at gaslighting, making me question everything I thought I knew about us, about myself. The worst part was the way she looked at me, so smug and bitchy, like she thought she was winning, like she could just throw some accusations back at me and I'd back off. But I wasn't backing down. I told her I wanted her out of the house that day, that I wasn't going to be played anymore. Her eyes widened for a second, like she was surprised I was actually serious. She snapped back with some slutty remark about how she'd done nothing wrong, and that I was overreacting because I was jealous. That's when I decided I had to take it to the next level. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd come clean. I needed something more. I started thinking about what I wanted, how I was going to get her to admit everything, even if I had to drag it out of her. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line, and there was no coming back from this. I knew I had to be strategic. If I was going to make her pay, I had to plan my next move carefully. And so I kept my composure, told her she had until the end of the day to leave, and watched her bitchy smirk fade into something more angry, more defensive. That was the beginning of what I knew would be a long, messy, and painful process. I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare, but I also knew I'd never see her the same way again. The trust was shattered, and now I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. After she finally stormed out, I was left standing in the silence of the apartment, feeling like I'd just been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, trying to process everything I'd just uncovered, everything she'd lied about, all the signs I'd ignored. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. How did I not see this coming? How did I not suspect that the woman I was about to marry was capable of betrayal like this? The house felt cold and empty without her bitchy smirk or her petty comments. I sat down on the couch, holding the phone with the pictures I took, feeling this strange mix of adrenaline and heartbreak. I kept looking at those images, her with that guy, her laughing, her touching him like he was the only thing that mattered. It was like a punch to the stomach every time I looked at them. This was real. She cheated on me. She cheated on me with my best friend Jake right before our wedding. The pain was sharp, but underneath it was this deep, simmering anger. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. She'd always called me insecure, controlling, jealous. She'd used those words so many times I almost believed her. But now I saw her for what she was, A manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could get away with anything. That's what made this so bitter. She lied, she cheated, and she turned it into some kind of game. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the fact that she'd been unfaithful or the way she'd gaslit me into questioning myself. Even now, I kept thinking about all those late nights, those work events, her excuses about being busy. All lies. I'd been so blind, so caught up in the idea of us, that I didn't want to see the truth staring me in the face. Now, I could see her for who she really was, a manipulative, bitchy woman who thought she could have her cake and eat it too. That night I started making plans. I knew I had to confront my best friend Jake too. How could he do this to us? I didn't want to believe it, but I knew I'd have to hear his side of the story. I'd always trusted him, and now that trust was shattered. I wasn't just angry at Emily. I was furious at myself for not seeing how toxic she was earlier. I also realized I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I needed to handle this like an adult. No impulsive decisions, no reckless yelling. I had to be smart. I wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me, but I also knew I had to keep a clear head if I was going to come out of this with some shred of dignity. So I sat there, trying to breathe, trying to decide what I was going to do next. The pain was real, but so was the clarity. Things could never go back to the way they were. Not after this. Not after she'd shown her true colors. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been run over by a truck, heart heavy, mind racing. I knew I had to face facts. Emily's betrayal wasn't just some fling, it was a full-blown affair, and I'd been the fool trusting her blindly. The worst part was knowing she'd gaslit me into doubt, made me question whether I was overreacting, made me feel like I was losing my mind. But now I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her turn this around on me. I decided I'd confront Jake first. He was my best friend, the guy I'd trusted since college. I still couldn't believe he'd do this, but I needed to hear his side, see if he had any remorse or if he was just as manipulative as Emily. I called him, and he answered with that cocky tone like he didn't see what he'd done as a big deal. I told him I knew everything, about him and Emily, about the texts, about the night I followed her. His reaction was classic. He tried to deny, but I had screenshots and evidence. He eventually admitted that they'd been seeing each other for months, that she'd been sneaking around behind my back the whole time. I could hear the guilt in his voice, but it wasn't enough. I told him I wanted to meet him face to face, that I wasn't going to let him play the innocent victim. I needed to see if he was truly sorry or just trying to save his ass. While I was waiting for him to come over, I started going through everything I knew about Emily. I found old messages, hidden emails, little clues I'd dismissed before. It all added up to a pattern of lying, cheating, and gaslighting. I realized I'd been so caught up in the fantasy of us that I'd ignored the warning signs. I'd been the idiot, blind to the bitchy side she kept hidden, the side that was capable of this kind of betrayal. When Jake arrived, I looked him in the eye and told him how much I trusted him, how much I'd cared for him as a friend. But that trust was gone now. I told him how she'd lied about everything, about the sex, the secret meetings, the flirtation. I demanded an apology, and he finally mumbled something about regret and knowing he screwed up. I told him I wasn't mad at him just yet, but I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive him, not after this. Then I turned to Emily's words, the lies she'd told, her manipulations to make me doubt myself, and I realized I had to cut her out of my life completely. No more gaslighting, no more pretending she cared. She was a toxic bitch who thought she could get away with anything, and I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I started planning how I was going to tell her to leave for good. I knew I had to do it face to face, no hiding, no running. She needed to see that I was done forgiving her, done pretending everything was okay. As the day went on, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally uncovered the truth, but it came at a cost. My trust was shattered, and I knew my relationship with her was over. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I'd have to rebuild myself from the ground up. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, but part of me felt liberated. I was done being the fool. The truth had set me free, even if it hurt like hell. That evening I called her. No more waiting, no more pretending. I told her to come over, face me, and stop playing her games. Her voice on the phone was still bitchy, still full of that fake confidence, but I could hear the underlying panic. When she arrived, she walked in with that smug smirk, trying to act like she still had control, like she could spin her lies one last time. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I looked her in the eyes and told her everything I knew. About the affair, the texts, the nights she spent with Jake. I played the screenshots on my phone, making sure she saw the evidence. Her face went pale, but she still tried to argue, to deny, to gaslight me into doubt. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "You're crazy and I don't know what you're talking about." But I cut her off. I told her that I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude, that I wasn't going to be played anymore. I also told her that I wanted her to leave immediately. I didn't want her in my space anymore, not after all this. I saw her eyes flicker with anger, but I didn't care. She tried to twist things, call me insecure or possessive like she'd been doing all along. But I was done listening to her bullshit. I made it clear that she was the one who betrayed me, not the other way around, and that I was done with her lies. She stormed out, screaming and cursing, calling me crazy, jealous, and a dozen other insults. I didn't bother to chase her. I knew it was over. I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with sadness. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, but I'd gained clarity. I knew now that I shouldn't have trusted her blindly. I should have seen the signs, but I was too caught up in the idea of us. In the days that followed, I focused on myself. I blocked her number, deleted her from my social media, and started rebuilding my life. It hurt like hell, losing someone you loved, especially when they're not who you thought they were. But I also felt a weight lift. I realized how much of my self-worth I'd lost trusting someone who was so selfish, so manipulative. Looking back, I learned a lot from this. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be your biggest betrayals. Gaslighting can make you doubt everything, but the truth always finds a way to surface. I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I guess you only learn these lessons when it's almost too late. Now, I'm trying to put this all behind me. I know I'll get through it, stronger and wiser. The betrayal hurt, but it also showed me who I am. Someone who deserves honesty, loyalty, and respect. I've realized that you can't control other people's actions, but you can control your response. And in the end, I chose to walk away from the lie, from the deception, and toward a future where I can trust myself again.